Has tipping gone out of hand? I was a server and a bartender. I'm not trying to take your tips away. In fact, if things get any worse, less people will go to restaurants to eat and restaurants will shut down and no more tips ever. Slippery slope argument? Sure, but good luck getting people on your side using your philosophy degree.
Make my own decision.
Tipping can be seen as a market mechanism that allows consumers to directly reward workers based on the perceived quality of service. In industries like hospitality, dining, tipping provides an incentive for workers to offer excellent service as their income is partially dependent on customer satisfaction. Income varies depending on customers' generosity, moods, and seasonality. This can lead to financial insecurity for workers, especially in low-income areas or slow periods.
But is it, like, you think it's okay?
In many countries, such as the US, tipped workers can be paid less than the minimum wage, with the tips expected to fill the gap between minimum wage and what they receive. If the tip doesn't cover the difference between the tip credit and minimum wage, the owners have to pay up to reach minimum wage.
Consultants call it right sizing.
So let's imagine if the minimum wage is $5 an hour and the employee gets tipped $2 an hour, the employer still has to pay the employee $3 to make up for this difference. In these cases, tips are subsidizing the employer because the employer's labor costs went down since the customers are directly paying for the wages of the employee. That's kind of weird. Shouldn't employers pay for employees? Now, the reality is that many servers are making much more than minimum wage, especially in Canada, where we don't really have that below minimum wage top-up system. When I worked as a server, I was getting paid higher than minimum wage and people would still tip. In total, I was getting around double minimum wage. The more attractive girls and bartenders around me were making significantly more. Some were even hitting six-figure salaries. Now, it's a hard job, but there's definitely harder jobs out there. I've had a lot of different jobs and being a server was definitely not the hardest. I was in my early 20s and I was making as much as some middle management office workers by just taking orders, being friendly, and exerting extra social pressure by chatting you up as soon as you have the POS system in your hand. Nudging.
There you go. Use that.
Let's look at the social norms of tipping. In the US and Canada, tipping in restaurants is customary and it's expected to be from 15 to 25%. It's gone up a lot. And there's a pressure to tip regardless of service. Apart from restaurants, you are expected to tip at bars, cafes, taxis, haircuts, deliveries, spa treatments, hotels, and really anywhere there's a service being performed. But it's not like that everywhere. These norms are very culture specific. In many parts of East Asia, tipping is not customary and sometimes it's even considered rude. Exceptional service in these areas is considered the norm and workers don't need extra motivation to do well in their jobs. In places like South Korea, tipping can be insulting to somebody's job, like they don't make enough or that they only did a great job this time. There's also norms and cultural differences in what is considered good service. In Europe, for instance, great service is when you get your orders fast and your waiter seems to be invisible, yet you never have your glass or plate empty. In the US, however, it's considered great service when waiters pay attention to the table in a form of conversations, friendship, and smiles from their waiter, who actually secretly resents them. There's often a culture shock when you come to the US and you're greeted by an overly friendly, happy, zany waitress. Then you're confused by having to pay an extra 20% on your bill to not be socially ostracized. But customs and norms are powerful things. They're informal rules that govern behaviors in society. They're the same reasons you don't cut in line or interrupt people while they're talking or generally be a rude degenerate. But they're sensitive and informed by culture, history, and they change all the time. Like, we don't expect women to raise the kids and men bring the paycheck anymore. Men don't just wear suits and women don't just wear skirts.
You gotta listen to me. The man needs help.
But we still have weird norms that have survived history. We still need diamond rings to get engaged, even though that whole industry is a bit of a racket. We spend thousands of dollars to have rituals to put dead people in the ground. And apparently we pay an extra 20% for somebody to move a plate from one place to another with a smile. Should the responsibility of paying workers fair wages fall on the consumer, or should businesses be required to pay higher wages? Now, the purpose of a business is to maximize profits, and that's what restaurants are. So paying higher wages to staff often just means that the food costs will go up and the consumer or customer will be paying for it anyway. Still, there's some that argue that there's some merit to the system because servers with the best service will make the most money and customers will have more control by tipping the servers with the best service. But is it really a meritocracy? Tipping is rarely based on service. It's based on appearances, perceived wealth, or consumer behavior.
Hi.
Hi.
On the flip side, it creates an incentive for servers to prioritize those who look like high-paying customers that will tip more, while ignoring others who they think will tip less. And this further perpetuates harmful prejudices. There's a further ethically questionable gamification by servers to maximize tipping, like flirting, telling made-up stories that make you feel more personable, or wearing revealing clothing. Now, the question is, when you tip, are you really truly paying for good service? Or are you paying because you think you have a shot with the waitress? Or are you paying because you don't want to look cheap? The social pressure to tip is just that powerful and expensive. And the servers benefit from this. Even if all restaurants came together to propose a single living wage, getting rid of tips altogether and equalizing the income for all servers, there's going to be a large number of servers who would be against that. Why would a bartender that makes $900 after one shift switch to a model of getting paid $20 an hour? Servers who are actually underpaid and can't rely on steady paychecks because their income is largely dependent on the generosity and mood of customers have a lot of financial instability, and this can lead to further disparities, especially for workers in low-income areas or during off-peak seasons. In recent years, there's been a growing movement towards eliminating tipping altogether. Several restaurants have adopted a no tipping policy, opting instead to pay their workers a fair, livable wage. Has this impacted the quality of service? Has this resulted in higher menu prices? Do customers come for the service or the food? Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you leave a tip, unless you're cheap and hate supporting hard workers. Just kidding. A 30% gratuity has already been added to your bill as a service charge. Thank you, come again.